Well, I've spent the last few weeks analysing this data. It relates to tens of thousands of sexual offences, non-contact offences. So we're talking about indecent exposure and voyeurism, upskirting, for example. Now, it gives us the most detailed breakdown yet of what's happening with these crimes. Of course, it was the murder of Sarah Everard that really brought attention to the crimes themselves, but also the risk of offences escalating. But that's not the first case where that's happened. And there is also an impact on those people who are targeted by indecent exposure. It's often joked about, but as we found out while talking to people, the word violated is used a lot, and it really does have a significant impact. They're crimes classed as low level, but to many, that's not how it feels.
He didn't touch me, but I felt violated. Like, it was disgusting.
When it happens, most don't report it. When police are called, in most cases, there are no arrests.
The rape case doesn't get prosecuted. Nothing's going to happen about someone flashing you.
It's been trivialised and normalised.
As a woman, I know it's serious and I know it's intimidating.
But it's not normal, and some offenders go on to do worse.
My name's Libby Squire and I'm the mum of Libby Squire, who was raped and murdered by a sexual predator. I mean, the headlines when Libby went missing, I remember being infuriated by them because they were like drunken student killed by Polish butcher. It didn't matter that he was Polish and it didn't matter that he was a butcher. It didn't matter that she was drunk. It didn't matter that she was a student. What mattered was a man had killed a woman.
That man had a history of indecent exposure and voyeurism. And for months, Pavel Relovich's behaviour was escalating. The crimes were only linked to each other and to him after he'd raped and murdered Libby. But several weeks earlier, when she phoned home, Libby told her mother a man had exposed himself to her the night before.
And she said, "Oh, I just told him where to go, Mum." She said, "He's pathetic." And it didn't really faze her. The girl she was with was upset by it. And I did say to her on the phone, "You should report it, Lib." And she went, "Oh, yeah, but yeah, I'm okay then, Mum." And it haunts me now that, you know, that was the time that he was offending. It could have been him.
Same area.
Same area, down
Right
the road.
timing.
Absolutely. So I don't know that it was him, but likely as not it was. And she didn't report it.
A month after Pavel Relovich was jailed for Libby's murder, Wayne Cousins used his police warrant card and faked an arrest to abduct, rape and murder Sarah Everard. He's since been linked with indecent exposures going back to 2015. How often are those crimes potential warning signs of behaviour escalating?
When I looked at the people who committed these very serious offences, there would be evidence in their back history of some of these other offences. So I think it's a case of, whilst you can't say that there's an automatic escalation, you can say that people who have committed the more serious offences will have some element of exposure or voyeurism or some harassment earlier in their lives. So there is something that you could look at in terms of early intervention, which prevents those people from moving into more serious offending.
This programme has obtained data on tens of thousands of non-contact sex offences, including indecent exposure. The figures from 37 police forces in England and Wales were released to us under the Freedom of Information Act. From 2015 until this summer, police recorded almost 47,000 indecent exposures. During that time, the number of cases has been going up, and by the end of last year, it had risen by almost a third. But in roughly the same period, even though police have been recording more of these crimes, the number of convictions for indecent exposure and voyeurism has halved. And then there are the crimes that are never reported. According to the Office for National Statistics, last year alone in England and Wales, there were well over 100,000 indecent exposure offences.
We marched down the street, we shouted slogans, however we dress, wherever we go. Yes means yes, no means no. At that time, we carried flaming torches.
More than 4 decades on, the slogans still have resonance. Al Garthwaite was on the first Reclaim the Night march in Leeds, at a time when Peter Sutcliffe was murdering women and police were saying, "Don't go out after dark alone."
I remember having an argument with a Conservative councillor from Bradford at the time who said, well, nice girls don't get raped, for goodness sake. And that was a very widespread thought, and unfortunately we still see some traces of that attitude today.
Dame Diana Johnson.
Campaigning for a change in the law and attitudes. Libby Squire was her constituent, and Dame Diana Johnson also knows how it feels to be targeted. She was on the underground when a man sat next to her and exposed himself.
Scared, actually. I mean, I was 18. I'd just moved to London to university. I was scared, but I didn't move. I just sat there frozen. And he then got off. But actually, he'd assaulted me, hadn't he, by doing that in front of me, and that needed to be dealt with, and that should have been reported, and I didn't. If a man is behaving in this way, it's very likely if he gets away with it, the risk, he's willing to take more risks and escalate his behaviour. So I think you're right, there needs to be a sea change in the way the police deal with these cases, as well as getting the public to feel reassured that if they do report, action will be taken, and of course the courts need the tools to actually deal with this type of offence.
At an aerial arts centre in Leeds, 20-somethings who've signed up for free self-defence classes, with experiences not so dissimilar from the generations before them.
And I looked over and he whipped his top up and flashed me, and I just felt completely powerless in that situation. And so he didn't touch me, but I felt violated. It was disgusting.
How long was the impact with you, or is it still now?
I mean, I don't know if I've ever thought about it in terms of lasting impact, but it's when I think about the memory now, I'm repulsed. It still has a very physical. I have a very physical reaction to the memory.
I don't think the onus should entirely be on women must do this to protect themselves. If the onus is on every woman should go to self-defence classes, and every woman should carry a rape alarm, or every woman should carry their keys in their pocket, why can't every man not be educated about not sexually assaulting people?
It might feel like nothing's changed, but crimes too long joked about are now on the political agenda. Police forces told by the Home Office they must thoroughly investigate every indecent exposure. That has not been happening until now.
Well, joining me now is Alison Lowe, West Yorkshire's Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime, and Emily Turner from the charity Women's Lives Leeds, which aims to make Leeds the first women-friendly city in the UK. Alison Lowe first. When you look at the figures in Claire's piece, recorded cases of flashing risen by 30%, yet prosecutions halved. Is the system failing women?
It's absolutely failing women. And there's a whole range of factors involved in that, from criminal justice, the wider criminal justice partners, and also policing. We know misogyny exists within policing and women are not heard. Their voices are not loud enough, and that's why, alongside Tracy Brabin, we're putting women and girls, who's the Mayor of West Yorkshire, we're putting women and girls at the heart of our policing plan, and we're including the voices of women and girls in that process.
Emily Turner, how concerned are you about these kind of offences that sometimes people see as sort of relatively trivial?
I'm massively concerned, and I think actually women also seem to brush them off. They say things like, well, it's just part of being a woman, but it's really not acceptable because it has such a massive impact on women's lives, and these behaviours escalate as well, and the prevalence is absolutely catastrophic.
So you'd say report them?
I would say report, of course, yes, definitely, but there needs to be a better reporting system, a more clear system that's quicker, that's not as complicated, so that women have more trust in it. They need to believe that something will be done from that report.
But with limited resources, isn't it right that the police focuses first and foremost on those more serious, the most serious crimes?
Well, as you know, policing's been cut to the bone over the last 11 years, and West Yorkshire's no different. But I think it's about understanding the pathway that some crime and some criminality can take. We know that lower level, as it's called, sexual offending, can be a gateway to higher levels of offending. So we do need to take it seriously. But also the impact on women is massive, because we're always in fear, we're always wondering who's that walking behind us, and this just makes us more scared to be in our communities, and that's not okay.
But when you look at West Yorkshire, just 6% of reported non-contact sex offences make it to court. In Cheshire, it's much better, 19%. If that figure doesn't improve, should the mayor here use her powers to fire the Chief Constable?
Well, there's lots of things that she needs to do first, and that we are doing together to hold our Chief Constable to account. We're understanding that data. West Yorkshire is outstanding for crime data integrity, so we record everything, and I think that needs to be taken into consideration. But also,
how do you force the police to make crimes against women a priority, and in particular these so-called lower-level crimes?
We put it in our plan. So we're having a consultation now. We've had several sessions with women who have been affected. We've had a round table, and we're asking lots of groups that have normally been marginalised, underrepresented, not heard, to take part in that consultation. And then their voices are going to be slap bang in the middle of that plan, and that is the document that we hold the Chief Constable to account to. And if it doesn't deliver, then obviously one of the options is dismissal.
Do you think the police are accountable to women?
Yeah, of course. I think that what the police are doing is they really want to know about the prevalence. They've asked women. What they need to do next is take that information, have a look at it and really do something about it. Really look at what women are saying that they want to improve their safety. At the moment, I think quite a lot of the focus is on women to keep themselves safe, what they're going to do as they navigate themselves around the city. But really the focus now needs to be on men. It needs to be looking at ways in which we can use our positive male allies to bring the issue up and to call out in other people and to really take responsibility.
And accept that, take responsibility. Yeah. But is it not also legitimate to ask women to take practical measures too?
Well, women do that all the time without being told to do it. It's just, we've been doing it since as long as we can remember. And that kind of stuff, we don't need to talk about that anymore. We do that anyway. We need to have a different approach, a whole societal approach, where what we're really saying is don't do it in the first place. If you see others do it, call it out. And if it happens to you, then report it. And there's where we need that good reporting mechanisms for that to happen.
You are yourself a survivor of sexual violence. You've spoken about that in the past. How did you feel the police handled what happened to you?
So I didn't report. I'm just one of those women who didn't have faith, but also I didn't believe that I would be believed, and I think that's one of the barriers that women face. With a mayor who is a woman and a survivor of sexual abuse, and a deputy mayor who is a survivor, hopefully we can be role models to women out there in West Yorkshire to come forward who will believe that we can and we will do something different.
Do you, in your heart of hearts, trust the police, believe in the police now?
Clearly, what's happened in the Met is shattering for all women. But I believe, and I have to believe, that West Yorkshire is different. West Yorkshire has the ability, the capacity and the desire to be different. And I'm going to work with them to make sure that that becomes a reality.
Do you have faith in the police?
Yeah, I do. I have really strong hope, actually, because we're led by two very powerful women, both with lived experience. I think that's really important. But really importantly, they are really listening to what women are saying. So I have hope, definitely.
And is part the answer creating new offences, public harassment, for example, or are the offences there and, the police and prosecutors have got to do their job?
I don't think it's really about creating new offences. I just think it's having pathways to deal with the so-called low-level offences. So ways of reporting them, and I'm not talking about to go through the criminal justice system, but to get a really good feeling and idea of the prevalence of the situation. So you're mapping and looking for hotspots and problem areas. And secondly, if you are saying, yes, we want to hear about these incidences to women, they then have the confidence to go on to report when actual offences happen. So it's about building up the whole of society into taking it seriously.
Yeah. Emily Turner, Alison Lowe, thank you both very much for joining us here in Leeds.